Welcome to Sacred Bible Chronicles, where we uncover the most fascinating and overlooked stories in the Bible. Today we delve into a mysterious and surprising event from 2 Kings 2:23-25, a moment that has left many readers shocked, puzzled, and curious. It's the story of Elisha, the prophet, and the bears. Imagine a group of young boys mocking a prophet of God, and then, in response, 2 bears emerge from the wilderness and attack 42 of them. Why did this happen? What could have led to such a harsh outcome? This isn't just a tale of divine punishment, but a much deeper, symbolic story with layers that are rarely discussed. This story is often skipped over or misunderstood, but today we'll explore the hidden meanings, historical context, and the powerful lessons behind this shocking event. Prepare to be both intrigued and challenged as we take a closer look at one of the most dramatic moments in the Old Testament. Before diving into the event itself, it's essential to understand the backdrop. Who was Elisha, and why was he so important? Elisha was no ordinary prophet. He was chosen by Elijah, one of the most revered prophets in Israel's history, to be his successor. Elisha's calling was extraordinary from the beginning. Elijah didn't just hand over his role, he left in a whirlwind of fire, ascending to heaven in a chariot. This departure left Elisha with both a tremendous responsibility and a powerful legacy to carry forward. Elisha's first journey after taking up Elijah's mantle was toward Bethel. Now, Bethel wasn't just any city, it had become a notorious center for idol worship. Despite its name meaning House of God, Bethel had drifted far from its original purpose. It was a city steeped in rebellion against the worship of Yahweh, filled with practices that dishonored God. So when Elisha walked through Bethel, he was entering hostile territory. The people of Bethel were known for rejecting God's prophets, and Elisha, as the newly appointed prophet, was no exception. At this point, Elisha's ministry was just beginning. He was on a journey to establish his role as the spiritual leader of Israel, and he needed to be taken seriously. However, what happens next challenges the very nature of respect, authority, and the consequences of rejecting God's messengers. As Elisha made his way toward Bethel, a group of young boys came out to confront him. According to the account in 2 Kings 2:23, they began to mock him, shouting, "Go up, bald-head." Go up, bald-head. At first glance, this might seem like simple playground taunting, but there's much more happening here than meets the eye. The phrase "go up, bald-head" is loaded with meaning. First, the reference to go up likely refers to Elijah's recent ascension into heaven. These boys weren't just teasing Elisha for being bald, they were challenging him to prove his prophetic power. It's as if they were saying, if you're really a prophet like Elijah, why don't you go up to heaven like he did? It was a mockery of Elisha's legitimacy, a blatant disrespect for the divine calling he had just received. The insult "baldhead" wasn't simply about Elisha's appearance. In ancient Israel, baldness could be seen as a sign of shame or disgrace. Whether Elisha was actually bald or not isn't the point. The boys were trying to strip him of his dignity, questioning his authority, and treating him as though he were beneath them. This wasn't just a childish taunt, it was an act of open rebellion against God's representative. Remember, Elisha wasn't an ordinary man. As a prophet, he was God's chosen messenger, and in biblical times, to insult a prophet was to insult God himself. These boys weren't just disrespecting a man, they were challenging the divine order, something that carried serious consequences in the context of ancient Israel. Elisha's reaction might seem startling to us today, but it was swift and deliberate. He turned around, looked at the boys, and cursed them in the name of the Lord. This curse wasn't born out of personal anger or pride, it was a prophetic judgment. When Elisha spoke, it was with divine authority, and his curse was God's judgment upon these boys and, by extension, the rebellious city they represented. Immediately after Elisha cursed them, 2 bears emerged from the woods and mauled 42 of the boys. Let's pause and think about that for a moment. -42. This was no small, isolated group. It was a large, organized band of young men who came out specifically to mock and defy the prophet of God. Their number represents the collective spirit of defiance in Bethel, a city that had long rejected God's authority. But what exactly does the attack by the bears signify? In biblical symbolism, animals often represent divine forces. The sudden appearance of the bears wasn't a random act of nature, it was a divine response, a physical manifestation of God's judgment. In the ancient world, nature was often seen as an instrument of God's will, and here, the bears were used to execute justice. While the Bible doesn't specify whether the boys were killed or simply injured, the emphasis is on the severity of the event. It's a dramatic moment, designed to send a clear message to the people of Bethel and to all who witnessed or heard about the incident. Mocking God's authority is no trivial matter. To fully grasp the significance of this event, it's important to place it within the broader context of Israel's spiritual climate at the time. Bethel, once a place of worship, had become a center of idolatry and rebellion. The people of Bethel had long turned away from God's commands, and the mocking boys were a reflection of the city's deep-seated rejection of God's authority. This wasn't just a random group of kids being mischievous. They were part of a larger culture that had lost its respect for God and his prophets. In ancient Israel, prophets were seen as God's voice on earth, and rejecting them was akin to rejecting God himself. The boys' actions were symbolic of the broader spiritual decay in Bethel. Given this spiritual backdrop, the severity of the judgment that followed becomes clearer. The judgment against them, though severe, was a public and visible demonstration of God's holiness and justice. It wasn't about personal revenge on Elisha's part, it was about upholding the divine order. In a society where God's prophets were the moral and spiritual leaders, disrespecting them had serious consequences, not just for the individuals involved, but for the entire community. This event served as a warning to the nation of Israel. Continued rebellion and disrespect for God's authority would lead to devastating consequences. So what does this ancient story mean for us today? On the surface, it may seem harsh or even unsettling, but there are profound lessons embedded in this event, lessons that remain relevant even in our modern world. First, this story highlights the importance of respect for authority, respect for others, and most importantly, respect for God. The boys in this story didn't just mock Elisha, they disrespected a man who was acting as God's representative. This wasn't just about hurt feelings or insults. It was about an attitude of defiance toward divine authority. Today we may not have prophets walking among us in the same way, but the principle remains: how we treat others, especially those in positions of spiritual leadership, matters. Second, the story reminds us of the seriousness of our actions. The Bible is clear that there are consequences to rebellion and sin. While we may not see bears coming out of the woods today, the principle of divine justice is timeless. Turning away from God, mocking his ways, or rejecting his messengers has real consequences. This event was a dramatic reminder of the weight of sin and rebellion. Finally, the story speaks to the power of God's justice. It may seem severe, but God's justice is always righteous. In a world where we often see injustice go unpunished, the Bible reassures us that God sees everything, and in his perfect timing, justice will be served. This story serves as a reminder that ultimately God is in control, and his ways, though sometimes mysterious, are always right. As we conclude this exploration of Elisha and the bears, it's clear that this story is more than just a strange or violent moment in the Bible. It's a powerful tale of respect, rebellion, and divine justice. It reminds us that God's prophets were not to be taken lightly, that God's authority is absolute, and that there are real consequences for rejecting his ways. At Sacred Bible Chronicles, we strive to uncover the deeper meanings behind these ancient stories and their relevance for us today. This event, as shocking as it may be, challenges us to reflect on our own attitudes toward authority, respect, and our relationship with God. Thank you for joining us on this journey into one of the most intriguing stories in Scripture. If you found this video thought-provoking, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to Sacred Bible Chronicles for more captivating stories from the Bible. And remember, these ancient stories have lessons that resonate far beyond their time.